Welcome to Let's Talk Motivation. I'm your host, Serena Miranda, and today my guest is Kalpa Gupta, founder and CEO of Connect Group, and coach and speaker and many other things. And I'm so thankful that you're here today with us. And welcome. How are you today?
Thank you, Serena. This is a joy being here. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad we finally were able to connect because it's been a while since we've met. I think it was March, wasn't it?
It was March, and then I believe we spoke about it early May, and then I was traveling like June and July were like
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah. So I am
busy.
I'm glad that it worked out. It's perfect timing. Whenever it
Yes,
happens, it's divine timing.
exactly. I think so for sure. And you caught my eye. I was at the NABO, San Antonio NABO event where you were a speaker, and I was able to attend your session, and I was really happy to be there. So I thought I would love for you to be a guest on my podcast because I think women need to know about Kalpa and what you do because you had a great message. So I'm excited to jump in and get to know more about you today.
Sure. Sounds like a plan.
All right, so let's start. So I was actually looking at your website and your LinkedIn and kind of getting to know what you're doing. I know there's some changes coming up, and I'm sure you'll give us a little bit insight on them. But you started in not where you're at right now, right? You were in an executive in, is it Fine Tech? And then now you're a coach and a speaker guiding women. How did that movement happen?
It's all divine timing, part of the plan of being on this planet, right? So
Mhm,
yes, you're right. I was in corporate America for 15 years. Bulk
mhm,
of my career was in financial services, fintech, that space.
mhm,
And half of, I want to say half of that career was more in product management, leading product and design teams for consumer and small business facing experiences, particularly companies like GE, American Express, Zell, Amex. That's where I
oh,
spent most
wow.
of my product career. But before, but I had done the other, I told you about the half of that career, right? The other half was included roles, early career in market research, brand management, customer marketing capabilities, and a good amount of time in fraud risk, with some internal consulting roles. So as you can probably imagine, I was training to be an entrepreneur, but I just didn't know about it back then, right? So
Exactly.
fast forward, I was completely burnt out. And
Mhm,
then I quit a job about 7 years ago. This August marks like that seventh year transition. I was burnt out,
wow.
and that led to a series of getting mental health for myself, therapy, coaching first, and then therapy, a
Mhm,
lot of deep self work, which we can dive into a little bit later. And then I took another role thinking I wasn't ready to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what idea I had, although I knew that that is where I needed to be, because I am the kind of person who doesn't fit in a box, right? And I felt like was, you know, trying to fit myself in a box, right?
yeah.
And I took a role, and the company did a restructuring of the whole product team. So I lost a job. I was very happy taking my severance check and pretty
Mhm,
much invested all of it in my business, right? That was 4 years ago. I
wow.
registered the business 6 years ago, but I didn't know. So my company name, we were talking about, it's Connect. It was about what's
Mhm,
next for Kalpa and connection, because I wanted deep connection with myself. I felt like in getting the right title, getting the right jobs, getting the right money, getting the child, of the husband, the home, everything right, I had lost myself in the process of like
mhm.
I just didn't know who I was anymore. And quite frankly, like I was tired of fixing myself, right? So
Really understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
Long story short, so then I started my company eventually. I When we started, I was doing advisory roles in the fintech, product risk, that space. And
Mhm,
then women in my tribe, they said, "Hey, you are a good coach." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Right. And then a lot of tough love and people lovingly challenging me, that I leaned into coaching, realizing that I had a lot of time in corporate like leadership roles, where a lot of my work was actually coaching, inspiring people, motivating them, right,
Right.
and really being that champion. So I leaned into that, and today, and that led to public speaking, because what I haven't shared so far is I'm also a childhood sexual abuse survivor. I should say I
Right.
experienced childhood sexual abuse. I don't have that identity as a
Mhm.
survivor necessarily anymore. So it was a lot to have gone through and not share with people, for nearly 35, 40 years of my life, right? So
Mhm.
it's only in the last several years that I've done that healing work, really made it my mission, right?
Yeah.
So because so today, my business looks very different. I solely focus on coaching and public
Okay.
speaking, and then I'm also creating events where women can come together. I primarily, in our business, we serve women executives as well
Right.
as entrepreneurs, really the leaders who are overworked and feeling underappreciated or undercharging for their services. I help them really up level their inner game so they can show up more boldly and confidently, because you know what,
Yeah.
your story, your past, your circumstances don't have to define you, and there's more
Yes.
more to us.
Mhm. That's interesting that you end right there, because that was actually my next question, because I know you work with a lot of high achieving women, and high achieving women grapple with the tension between external success and the internal fulfillment. And in your experience, what are the common misconceptions that hold about self-worth and achievement? Because I've met a lot of high achieving women, and I know there's a little bit of a pull between the two, right?
Absolutely. So first of all, and this is our conditioning. A lot of the beliefs that we have, how we take a lot of external validation in defining who we are, and society teaches us. For example, when you go to school, right, or even before you go to school, oh, girls are this way, boys are supposed to be this way, or you look pretty, or you are so brave. And then you go to schools, and if you argue, oh, you are too talkative, or you're not supposed to be this way, or if you're too smart, then you dim your light to fit in with the rest of the group, right? And there's just constantly, we are like hearing messaging depending on
Right.
what's happening. And then if you have trauma, that adds like trauma. And when I say trauma, I speak broadly, things that people, two-thirds of American adults, by the way, have experienced, which is either abuse, neglect, or family dysfunction, right?
Mhm.
So physical, sexual, emotional abuse, physical, any kind of neglect, emotional, physical, or even family dysfunction, like family separation, incarceration, mental health illness in a family, caregiver, or somebody being in jail. And we have a lot of that, that we have
Right.
gone through collectively as a society, right? So you think as you're growing up, oh, if I just get the good grade, if I just get the job, if I get this title, I will find that internal security and I'll be enough. And
Right.
you're not necessarily thinking enough in those contexts. You're thinking, oh, that's something to go forward to, look forward to. But what we don't realize, that's also a little bit of an anxiety there, that because we are not feeling safe in our body, in what we have, we are constantly looking external validation, right? So getting good grades to good jobs. At somewhere we forget in all that achievement, right? That we are enough. We are deserving of
Mhm.
love and breath and rest and joy and friendship and care,
Right.
regardless of whether we accomplish those things or not.
That's right. Yeah.
And
That is so good.
yeah, and it doesn't hit you until you actually have everything, and you're like on this hamster on a wheel, and like there's this hustle culture, or even this joy we take, oh, I'm busy, or I pull some overnighters. And I've been that person, like
Yeah.
even when there's so much work, that you are thinking you need to stay up, but there is a different way of being in that life, in that
Mhm.
corporate job or in that business too, that most of us are not taught, because we are building the thing, we are going after the career, the achievement, as if that is somehow going to complete the lack that we
Right.
inherently feel.
For sure, definitely. And I know, I as a young daughter, It was my mom is from Mexico and my dad is from Texas. So they had two totally different upbringings. My dad comes from a middle class, very middle class family, and my mom came from a very poor family in Mexico. And so her experiences and her trauma that she had as a young girl, um, I remember her stressing over the careers we were going to choose, my sister and I, as young women when we went to college, because she didn't finish college until she was in her early late mid 40s. My sister graduated high school and my mom graduated college that same year. So when I chose to be, I told my mom I want to be a teacher. It was really hard for her. She was like, "No." Oh my gosh, she was just I think she even cried. She was like, "Please, please don't become a teacher. You need to go into business." And she was like stressing business and it was just I could just see this pull for her because she wanted to make sure that her daughters didn't struggle, right? Because she saw her mother struggle and she struggled. She just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Like you say, the everything aligned perfect. And she met my dad, who
Mhm.
was a very supportive husband and father and man. I mean, he loved to see women succeed. So when my mom was like, I want to go back to college, he's like, let's go back to college because you'll make more. You'll be more successful if you have a college degree. And he supported her and he paid for her to go back to school. But the things that she had, that baggage of that fear
Mhm.
was like 100% on us. And I remember being in high school and being like, I want everyone was doing like half days. You know how you could do half days and work? She was
Mhm.
like, no, do not do that. Finish school, go get into a business degree. Don't become a teacher. They don't make any money. And I remember the angst in her voice. And I was like, Mom, I got you. I got this. I'm going to be a bilingual teacher because I was bilingual.
Mhm.
And I was like, they make good money and women are paid more. And it just so happens, I think my first job I in San Antonio, I got paid really well for a teacher. I
Mhm.
think I was up in the mid to high 50s. I mean, yeah, so it was like 56,000, which was really good for a teacher. And in 1999, and so her fear subsided, but I remember that like all that stress and that the trauma that she had as a child and a woman coming from a single mom that supported her. So, you know, and she gave that to me. And I think the cycle got broken because I stood up and I said, Mom, we're going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And then now my daughter and I have two boys and a girl. Um, we look at education and work and as a, just in a different way. And it's hard for her because she comes from that those years and that mentality of you got to go to college, you got to get a good job, you got to you got to get a career. And sometimes I said, Mom, we're in real estate, we're in insurance, you don't always need a college degree. My son's gonna he just got accepted to the Culinary Institute of Americas. He's gonna go be a chef and he wants to be a private chef. So she's learning and we're kind of I feel like we're breaking that cycle, but it's hard. It is really hard.
Yeah, it's so good what you shared. The healing this whole transgenerational, intergenerational trauma is all we are doing, right? And we get the
Yeah.
privilege. We have the you and I have the privilege to do that, right? A different story. Like
Yeah.
I really resonated what you shared about your mom. In my case, in your case, your dad was able to support, and your mom went back to college. Like in my case,
Yeah.
my mom, her childhood dream for us was like, you be a doctor. She wanted me to be a doctor,
Right.
right? And
Mhm.
this is like no different that in most Indian families growing up as girl becomes a doctor, the boy becomes an engineer, and we have a surplus and amazing engineers today, right? But for me, I wasn't drawn to that, and the reason for that, my mom had graduated in science. She was like first like really good student, and just before her exam she got married. She was 19 at the time, and
Mhm.
she gave her final exams, and she was under the impression it was arranged marriage back in the day. That's how families, they chose each other and they got married.
Right.
My grandpa like loved his daughter-in-law and like very supportive, but going back to college, and she thought she could pursue her education, but that wasn't the reality. She married into a joint family. My dad was the first breadwinner, and then my two younger uncles who were in college. So my mom could not pursue the things. My dad was an insurance agent on the side, and he made financial, like he had $10,000 income, not dollar, like INR, which is very low compared to, right, this thing. Back in the day, it was a good income because we didn't have to pay rent where we were living, but that
Right.
side income supplemented. But so even today, so education for us was like the only way out. For my mom and dad both, they poured into me and my brother and
Right.
their siblings. And so it's interesting for me, knowledge is still my top motivator, the entrepreneurship. And I still struggle when my son, by the way, wants to be a chef. Like he's 12.
Oh,
He's going to be 12. He loves, one day he wants to be an aerospace engineer, the other day he wants to be a chef. But
yes, yes.
someday, right? So how
I
do we
know.
keep that relationship, right? Is the question.
And I remember my husband's a serial entrepreneur. So he's like, I had to finally shut him down at 50. I said, no more businesses, because he'll be like, oh, I have an idea. And I'm like, no, I'm like, no more ideas. But it really did, go into my kids, because actually the youngest, especially when he was in elementary school, I get a phone call from the principal, and she's like, Miss Miranda, you need to come in for a conference. And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? So I go in there, and she's got this big folder on her desk, and she's like, well, Adan was caught. You know how in elementary school they give you these, they used to call them tiger bucks, they're like paper dollars when you do good. And
Yeah.
then at the end of the week, you can go and buy pencils with those things. So he was having people pay him, and he had an application, and he was hiring colorers, drawers, and marketers. I don't even know what he called them. And he would have them draw these little Marvel characters, and everyone had to apply for the job. And then they would sell them at the lunchtime. And that was the first time I got called in. The second time I got called in, he was insuring pencils. He had made this insurance business. Okay, mind you, we didn't even do the insurance business yet. That wasn't until 2019. And this was like in 2010. And he was selling pencils, because I would buy the big pencils from Sam's, the nice Ticonderoga. And he would say, I'll insure your pencil. If it breaks, you get a brand new pencil, but you give me your tiger bucks. So yeah, I finally said, look, son, you need to stop, do it after school, because this principal, it keeps calling me in to shut down your businesses. And of course she was like, he's obviously not doing it in class. But those ideas, and we would always share that stuff with our kids. We're like, what kind of business do you want to start? And so it's like contagious when you become an entrepreneur, and then your kids are around it. So it's exciting.
I love that story. I love that because, and it's so good. He's seeing different stories because there's so much of the brain's wiring that happens in that 0 to 8 years. And eventually, I mean, yes, our brains are not fully developed 25, 30 years old, but still, like, the early beliefs are there. And then the fact that he knows that he's seen successful entrepreneurs and businesses, and that is part of the script for him. It's so good.
Yeah, they're so excited. They all work in our business, all three of them. He's the most daring of the three, but it's very different, because my mom and my dad passed away in 2011, but they came from very W-2. You work until you die, basically. You retire at 65. You're in the same job. And there wasn't, not until later in life, before my father was diagnosed with cancer, did he have that bug that he was like, I don't want to be in an office my whole life. So he started purchasing rental properties and doing that type of business. But if he had lived longer, I think he would have done a lot more, because he wanted to. There was that fear, because they come from the Depression.
Yeah.
Their parents were from the Great Depression. So
Yeah.
losing your job is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much, and for us, it was under the colonial rule, right? When India was getting independence, my dad, like my grandpa, was more in that era. My dad was he was born right after independence, so still like he had those. And it's interesting you bring that up. It's when I started doing a lot of the healing work, I realized I had to learn a lot more about my family history, their origin stories. And
Yes.
one of the things I realized that how many of my ancestors had lived through the great famine in Bengal, like the eastern part of India,
Wow.
that millions of people had died. We probably need a whole nother history lesson
Yeah.
for that. But the
That's
long
a whole nother podcast.
a whole nother session for that. But the long gist of that is, which meant there were nights where my dad would just drink some barley with his mom and live there. And
Yeah.
even at his this age, he's going to be 75 next year, but he
Oh.
has this problem of like eating sometimes if we are not monitoring, right? And he's
Yep.
amazing, he's like nimble, he's healthy, but then he and I realized I have that tendency, right? I look
Mhm.
lean, but if I'm and it's I was not malnourished, I always looked like one early childhood, but that's a whole other story. But so once we realize, our parents, our families, like the generation that they have lived through, so many of us high achievers, you don't realize
Yes.
it's that scarcity, it's that fear of something, or not having, how we are running on like autopilot of our intergenerational stories. And
Yeah.
like I have to remind myself, I'm my great grandmother's like wildest dream, right? I get
Exactly.
to live, I get to create something beautiful
Yes.
and be feel differently.
That is so amazing. My grandmother lived to be 101, my mom's mom. She just passed away in 2023, and I would interview her, and I have these videos. I'm gonna have to put them all together for a YouTube video, but I would ask her, I'm like, what? Because she left her husband in her 20s with 3 young babies from Mexico, and I used to tell her, what minds like what was your mindset in, and she didn't speak any English, she spoke all Spanish, and she said she would always tell me siempre adelante, and which means always go forward. She would
Mm.
say, don't look back. She goes, you go forward. And she would say it with such like conviction, like, I am not going back that way. I am going this way. And then she goes, and then you set a goal and you meet it and then you keep going. And so now I like to say that's my compass, right? She lived 101 years through many, many challenges. I'm like, I have a soft life compared to her life. And,
Mhm.
we look back, but I'm like, what gave her that energy and that focus to move forward? And I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you look at your abuelita, you look at your grandparents, look at your grandma, grandpa, she was their great grandmother. And now I'm like, it matters what their journey was. Their
Mhm.
story matters because that's why you have your story. It's like we've got to tap into that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So good.
Definitely. So now are you still doing I was looking at your program. Do you still have that webinar, Hidden Scars, Hidden Costs?
Yeah, so I still do that. That's one of my signature like webinars talking
Yeah.
about really
Tell us about that.
yes. So my so I see myself as, knowledge as one of my superpowers, and it's also one of my values, right? And the values
Mhm.
for my business is educating women so that when they become knowledgeable, when they have that insight, the ahas, the wisdom, they can do better. Now, knowledge is not even half the battle. People say, oh, half the battle is like getting the knowledge, but I believe there's more. Like once what you do with that knowledge, right? So my
Right.
education with this webinar, my intention with this webinar is sometimes people are ready to work with me directly as a client. Not many people I know that wake up and say, hey, I need a coach today, right? Unless something, unless they've hit a rock bottom or something they're going through is not
Yes.
working. Very few. And then if you're a lifelong learner, there is that group of people who
Mhm.
always believe in that. They always have a coach, right? I'm one of those. I've had a coach for different coaches for the last 7 years, and then even before that. So
Yeah.
intention with that webinar is to really make people aware how their early, basically their lived experience, the lived experience of their families, the environment, everything create certain beliefs about themselves, and all or
Right.
scars they have a hidden cost in terms of, if you don't share, if you don't change your habits in terms of how you're living your life, they will cost you literally millions, in the long run, right? So and so that's my humble effort to actually take the knowledge, make it accessible for me. And and this talk has kind of evolved from the first time I did my webinars, right?
Yeah.
The where So when I left corporate at some point, and I was actually a volunteer, helping an organization called CASA, which is like the court appointed special advocates who
Uh-huh.
basically support the foster kids in foster care, right? And I was helping them with the training and program for the CASAs. I was not a CASA at the time.
Uh-huh.
Eventually, I became one, but I came across so much of information around early adverse childhood experiences, which are known as ACEs, which is what I talked about earlier: the abuse, neglect, family dysfunction. So there's literally like 10 things that you can look at if you have
Wow.
experienced or not, and give yourself a score. And if you have a higher score, um, meaning 4 or higher, you have significantly high adverse like health outcomes. Your brain's wiring kind of changes, and like literally like it has implications, right, in terms
Right.
of suicidal ideations, your depression, and I was like, wow, like I at least have a 2 on this, and I didn't know like a whole lot of about this. So I wanted to make, and this is publicly available. This is like done. This is
Wow.
also research done back in the late 90s by CDC. So I
Wow.
started talking about that for people, like what are your silent saboteurs? And then as I started working with our clients, I realized somehow if you're not aware of your trauma patterns, like most people are seeking help for career or business, right? So if they're not aware of what else is going wrong, they come for help on career and business, and they fix something, quick fixes, and then the similar patterns show up in people pleasing and in other areas, or tolerating less than ideal relationships, and then
Uh-huh.
or overspending or underspending. And I saw that go through. I have experienced that in my own life, and I saw that pretty much going impacting all of their lives. And I came
Right.
across a statistic of 2/3 of adults also have experienced financial trauma. This was like a couple of years like published by Experian in a research. So
Wow.
I started sharing and doubling down, given my background in money, and then what I had heard about the research I had seen about early adversities, the ACE studies, and then
Right.
financial trauma into one webinar. And really the what helped me, what is helping many of my clients in terms of behavior, I poured into that one webinar. Really, my hope is, my goal, my desire, my hope, right, legacy is women, people make more money. And when I say
Yeah.
money is just a tools. Money is just a tool, right? I
Right.
mean, you have the space, right? You actually feel the abundance, you have the relationship, you
Yes.
have career fulfillment, right? Because we are we are human beings, right?
Right.
We're
Right.
not here to do more and more. Of course you can do more, right, with the energy, but you're here to heal yourself so that your next generation, your next, maybe your siblings next generation, the next generations, for humanity as a whole, we are better, and we don't have as much conflicts, we have peace across the globe.
Definitely.
There.
No, that is so true. And I also noticed on that you advocate for leading with compassion and courage. So how can leaders cultivate these qualities in environments that often prioritize the performance over the people?
God, such a good question. I feel like you lack compassion for others when you lack compassion for yourself, right? So,
Mm,
or rather the other way around. A lot of us,
right.
feel judged because we are silently judging other people, right?
Hmm.
We can't see, oh, how somebody can put such crappy content out there, so we will not even go and put our own content, because that means criticizing, and that means,
Yeah.
we are like pleasers. We want to be liked by people, right? So a lot of the time, the compassion is lacking because we forget to give the grace to ourselves, right? So when you operate with giving grace to yourself, and also know that you are worthy of receiving love and compassion, you also give other people grace inherently, right? um,
Sure.
there is a space in terms of, high achievers. If you've had trauma, sometimes we have a hard time giving grace to ourselves. So we are we are giving benefit of doubt to other people who are violating our boundaries or who
Mm,
are not really kind to us. But we forget to give ourselves grace, right? But for by and large, for me, for leaders, if you the compassion and courage, I mean, that's why you are there. Your job
right.
is not to do their work. Your job is to actually create the conditions where they feel appreciated, where they
Yeah.
see that common purpose, the why, and actually deliver it. So my challenge to anyone listening here, and if they're feeling they're lacking compassion, is start taking account of some things that are going well in your life today. Like, just take a minute, like pause this recording if you're listening, right? Just
Yeah.
say what's going well. What do you appreciate? Like, who are the people or moments, or where do you have that have transformed your life, and you've not taken a moment to go and thank those people. Once you start appreciating, noticing what's going well, and the people that have had a positive impact on your life, it takes practice. You become more and more in tune with what's working well, and in terms of criticizing people, you also start seeing the goodness in as a leader in the team. and and
Sure.
and courage for me is very fundamental. Courage is one of my like five, like, personal values, top values. And courage is courage to live life. Courage not just to challenge, but courage to actually say what needs to be said, right? It doesn't mean hurting people. Yes, their feelings can be hurt, but you're not being harsh.
Right.
Courage to me is really telling the facts as it is, and
Mhm.
courage to see a different way, courage to be wrong. Like, courage is like
Mhm.
super fundamental for me as a leader. And if you don't have courage, like, what are we doing here?
Exactly. That is so important. And I think when I turned 50, I felt like I focused on both of those because for many years prior, I was first a mom. That was one of my big jobs, right? I was a teacher, I was an educator, which it takes a lot of emotion out of you and a lot of
Mhm.
time. And then I was my husband's supporter. He's the entrepreneur that kept starting businesses. Those were our bread, that's where our support came from. So when I came to work with the family business, I was in a support role. But when I turned 50 and all the kids were had the last one out of high school, I said, "You know what?" I joke around and I tell everybody, I fired myself and I said, "I'm not helping you anymore, Ron." I was like, "I found you an assistant. They're going to take over all my job." She's an amazing virtual assistant. She's so wonderful. And now she helps us run the real estate business. And I was able to just go off and start my insurance brokerage. And it was scary because it's all on me. It's just me. And I every now and then he'll be like, "Tell me how I can support you. What do you need me to do to help you?" Because for so many years I helped him. And I'd be like, "Okay, I need my website up, or I need you to help me figure out, he's my numbers guy. So I'm like, I need to get this goal in my income. How many policies do I have to sell?"
Mhm.
And but yeah, that is right now it's just a small team, but if we're not I want my people that work with me to feel like they've got a place where they can flourish and they can just we want to build a good team. So that's really important to have that mindset, right?
Absolutely. And, I was listening to your a few of the episodes earlier, and, like, as an entrepreneur, I think hiring has stretched me, because when you hire, you realize that A, it's helpful for growth, and B, it's you realize when you pay somebody, it's very easy to again fill up your 9 to 5 like calendar, right? Doing things. But when you have to pay somebody to do the thing, you realize, do I really need it? Like, does it need to be done? Or I can just basically stop doing it, automate it, or, actually, if
Exactly.
it's bringing in money or it has any value, then pay somebody. It's one of the easiest way I think you can get back to focusing on the things that matter, right? So
For sure.
I'm not saying just go ahead and just hire without any plan, but what I'm saying is the first hire you learn a lot, right?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And then and really like I know like I like to do my social media. I like to do my conversations with my prospective clients. I want
Yes.
them to see me. So on the back end, my assistants, my virtual assistants or the people that are helping me create, I'm like it's more of a static and more of a it's a different type of social media, or they're
Mhm.
helping me organize things on the back end. The
Mhm.
things that I think are boring, they help me do because otherwise but I've noticed that having people to help us so we can do the things that really bring in customers, I think that's important as well. And it used to be we did it all ourselves. My
Yes.
husband and I did everything ourselves. And I was like, I finally told him, we can't do everything. I'm not like 10 people. I don't like answering emails, boring emails from real estate agents. I'm like, you need to answer them or find somebody to answer these generic emails. Like, where do I find my business card template? You know, I'm like, I don't need to answer that. I'm a CEO. I need to answer the deep questions.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. What do you enjoy in your business? I'm curious. I know this is a podcast conversation, but I'm
Yeah,
just so
that's
curious.
fine.
Like, if you're uncovering, like, what do you enjoy doing?
Well, I enjoy working with business owners and helping them figure out
Mhm.
where their risk is and so that they can enjoy their business. Because if there's a loss, like I was just talking to somebody earlier today and I was like, do you know how much your deductible would be in dollar amounts? Like everyone's like, oh, it's a 1% or it's 2%. I'm like, but do you know what the dollar amount is? Like if you were to have a loss and you don't have that 1% in your bank account to cover the loss, I'm like, do you know what that dollar amount is? It $5,000? Is it $12,000? And they're like, I have no idea. And
Mhm.
so I like helping them answer those questions where it's like, oh, wait a minute, I need to have my deductible in an account in just in case. I'm like, well, yeah. If you're a large business and you have a general liability and someone gets hurt in your business and they slip and fall and now you have to pay to get that taken care of, do you have that money set aside for that one oops? And they're
Yeah.
like, I didn't even know. I don't even know. Even some people don't even know what their 1% is for their roof. If their roof, if it like I was on the north side of San Antonio during a hailstorm, holy moly, our entire suburban looked like it had been beat by rocks and it was a hailstorm. Our deductible was $500. It was almost a total loss because it's a 2015 Suburban, but I'm like, do you know what that number is? So I like helping people find that number so that they know they're not surprised and they're covered and they have what they need to just keep doing business, right?
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. You
Mhm.
made me think today. I need to go back and look at look at some more numbers on that.
What is your number, right? What is your deductible?
Mhm.
That's funny. And then I have a question. So AI, it's everywhere. How
Yeah.
are you implementing that in your business as a business owner right now?
So it's tied to the previous question we were discussing. What brings me joy? So I like connecting with people, like conversations like this.
Yes.
I am the face of my brand, my company. I like coaching women, and I also like writing. Right. So for me,
Mhm.
also the social media has been hard to let go. Right. But it's because I like writing. But what I realize is I am not necessarily like good at posting, creating Canva images. I can do it. I've done it, so I
Yeah.
have hired help on the past, and now I just recently hired somebody to actually help me out. What How I'm using AI is like we pretty much I've had a ton of work done on this. So I've been writing publicly and or creating content in some shape or form since 2019 pretty much, right? So
Mhm.
I have a whole library of things that I've fed paid version of one of the um, uh, AI. Oh God, you talk to me about humans. I'm talking, but you talk to me about AI, and suddenly I'm silent, right? But because I'm like working with them so much, and I've read some of the info, and I'm using it to brainstorm, to make me think better, to make me
Yes.
ask better questions. And then I also have a lot of my tones, my voice, like who are my ideal clients, who are, what problem can I, more than the client, like what are the symptoms they are experiencing, right? Because sometimes
Right.
people don't know the root cause, right? They don't, so so how do I weave into that marketing, right? So I have
Yep.
using AI for that, because honestly, the when I go on platforms, there's just so much crap sometimes, like misinformation, disinformation. I want my marketing to be more human and authentic
Right.
and genuine, coming from lived experiences. I'm using AI to actually for reviewing, for streamlining, for, but then the messaging, the key things that they need to do, or the tips or the tools or resources, it's all me, right? Coming
Yeah.
sourcing, right? So, or like even to educating, like what should I be thinking that I'm not thinking, right? So that's how
Yep.
I'm using AI for my marketing, for content ideas, for the thing, for re-leveraging, like creating things, maybe what type of content speaks well for LinkedIn versus an email list, those type of things, right?
Yeah.
uh,
So what are you using, Chat GPT
I
or
I have
what's
a
your
paid version of Gemini,
Oh,
and then I
wow.
also have like Chat GPT, and then I have some proprietary things. Like I have like immersed myself into it, so I've also gone to
Wonderful.
coaches, various masterminds programs, and where
Yeah.
we've kind of really, because AI, look, AI is here to stay here, right? I started my career like very earlier on data analytics, business intelligence. I'm trained in economics. I used to do a lot of modeling. So I've kind of evolved, followed that course for a
Right.
long time in my career. I've led like analysts, but most recently with the computing power, in computers, like, chips have become more powerful, more things. And now with AI,
Yes.
it's here to stay, right? So the challenge in my business is like, people, heard the other statistic, people are going to, the first top use of AI is people are using it as a therapist, right? So if they're using it as a therapist, if they're, and they are using it as a coach, they are
Yeah.
using it as, like looking at use cases of how do I respond to this email, like what are those common things that people are struggling with. So I've doubled down on actually talking to people more and more for
Hmm.
my mental health, and I encourage that, and I'm using AI to do things that I don't do as well.
Right. I like to use it to help my me work a little faster.
Mhm.
So what in insurance specifically, I'll like if I get a client, I had a restaurant that came to me and said, Serena, I'm renewing my policy. I don't want to continue with this agency because
Mhm.
there's no human. It's
Mhm.
just, I don't even know who it is. And I said, okay,
Mhm.
well, send me your current insurance. So I put in the current insurance and then I put in my quote and I asked ChatGPT to do a comparison
Mhm.
and to give me the pros and cons. And most times I'm a better choice. So
Yeah.
but it lays it out so wonderfully. I don't have to waste time doing that comparison. It does it for me. And it does like this policy has this one has this. Overall, Serena's policy is the better one for renewal. And then I get to send it to them and they're like, visually, they're like, Serena, that is so great. I really like I can see what I had and
Yeah.
what I'm lacking
Yeah.
and how you're filling that gap. So
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed using it for
Yeah.
in that sense as well.
Yeah, yeah. I will admit, there's a part of me, as I'm using AI so much, like if for some of the things, I sometimes have to just really take a break and caution and go, am I actually not trusting me here to just share what's my natural, whatever comes in, and just again make it, am I falling in the trap of perfectionism using AI, right? So
Right.
I do have to, given the space that I'm in, and high achievers and perfectionism and how things show up in us, I really am using it to move a little bit faster, like slow down in terms of what I want to do, but then become more efficient. But at the same time, I watch out, I do watch out and worry sometimes about that is somehow, am I falling in that, or others falling in that trap of perfectionism now that we have AI, that everything has to look prim and proper and
Exactly.
right. So something I'm watching out for.
That
Yeah.
is interesting. Yeah, I'd like to know more about that as well. That is good because at times I can see that where that would happen, that people want it to look perfect. And sometimes it gives me these emails or these responses where I'm like, that doesn't even sound like me because I say hey a lot.
Mm.
I'm like, this doesn't sound human. And I'll tell it, I'm like, you know how I speak, and this is not me. I'm like, so I don't know where you pulled this in from chat, but
Oh,
change it.
it absolutely the training model, it's learning, right? So that's why I have my own sessions. I've trained the bots with my
Yeah.
things, right? The way I approach things. So I still have to kind of review and pretty much everything. But of course, um, it's it's helping me meet my clients where they are versus me
Yeah.
not doing anything, right? I would rather give something that helps them versus just be in my own perfectionism bubble without
Yeah.
anything to bounce back on.
Yeah. And I tell some of my customers don't want to use it. And I service a lot of people in trades that are more of the blue collar, and they don't see the benefit of it. And I tell them, I'm like, well, you need to think a bit this way. If you have an assistant to help you with your invoices, with help you with your responses to a client coming in, could that make your business and your turnaround time a little quicker? And they're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, like an assistant. I'm like, it's like either hiring an assistant to be there to help you answer calls or return these emails. It can make you more efficient.
Yeah,
Automation.
yeah, and honestly, my clients sometimes don't have a choice. They are sometimes the product managers, product directors, like executives who are building this type of AI and
Exactly.
natural learning. So for them, they absolutely are using it in a way that helps them think about it more. But for them, it's all about also claiming their time back so that they
Yes.
can just step into their feeling of enoughness and do what they want to do with that spare time and enjoy
Yeah.
life. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, Kalpa, I haven't super enjoyed this. I'm sure we need to do another one and talk more about more history and where we come from as women business owners. But I look forward to more conversations with you, and I really appreciate your time. And thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you, Serena. It was so lovely being with you here today, and absolutely anytime.
Yeah.
We look forward to having a conversation again.
Yes, we need
Take
to
care.
dig deeper into our histories, like where,
Yes,
you know.
two languages.
Yeah.
My son says polyglot, so yes, we will dive into that.
Yes. You have a great day, and I wish you well. And where can people find you? Give us your
Oh,
social.
yes. I am very active on LinkedIn. It's Kalpashree.Gupta. So that's Kalpashree Gupta. That's how you can find me on LinkedIn. Give me a follow, subscribe to my newsletter, send me a DM, connect. Let me know what resonated. They can also find me on my website, Connext, which is knekxt.com. There is a way to subscribe to my newsletters. You'll find a ton of podcast recordings that I've been on earlier. So you'll find some value there.
Wonderful. And I'll put all that also in our description for our podcast as well.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
Serena.
Kalpa. Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye.